The White House's AI.gov features use cases for artificial intelligence all across government. The stories on the site detail how agencies determine which AI tools work for the mission challenges they're trying to solve. Seth Abrams is Chief Technology Officer for Homeland and Force Protection at Leidos. Carolyn Chipman is their Vice President for Homeland and Force Protection Growth. Seth and Carolyn, welcome. It's great to talk to both of you. Great to see you again, Seth. Thanks for joining me today. The agencies are wrestling, as I mentioned, with artificial intelligence. And one of the themes that I take away is that they're focused now on use cases. What's the reason that you think use cases are so important to the way that agencies are approaching AI right now? Seth, I'll start with you. Thanks for joining me. Welcome.
Thanks. Really love having the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. When you're talking to a customer about an abstract technology, it doesn't really help them in their day-to-day lives. But when you have that use case in hand, what you're allowed to do is you're able to say, look, here's the problem statement, and then here's the technology and services that we can apply to that problem statement in order to get that across. And so what we found is that those use cases allow us to have deeper, more meaningful conversations. And when it comes to AI, it's no different, right? I mean, it's really just another way to get the technology across. And so where you start with the mission use cases is always really beneficial for those conversations.
I think too, the use case allows us to have a conversation with our customer, and they can clarify mission understanding. Oh no, that's not how we would use it. We would use it this way. Does your solution respond to it? And I think when we have those conversations and we talk through the use cases, we have a more clear avenue to approach with an AI solution.
Carolyn, what are the success steps that agencies are taking to move from that use case discussion to pilots where they're actually trying things out and working through the potential bumps in the road and the ways that they're going to start to deploy something?
So I think there's a couple of things that the agencies are really doing and that we're seeing our partners do to make sure that when they bring a new technology into their environment, that it is safe, that it will be adopted. The first thing is bring it in and make sure it's safe to operate in their network, obviously. And the second thing is user acceptance, right? So initial small group testing or taking those use cases we just talked about and having them applied by a small set of users. Once you get trust from that small set of users, we're seeing some word of mouth, transcribing the capability and really making adoption much, much faster.
Seth, some of the technologies that are involved, some of the underlying technologies are manifesting themselves in a number of different ways. One of the things when I was at Billington Cybersecurity Conference last week that a lot of people were talking about regarding AI was interesting to me at a cybersecurity conference, talking about chatbots and the way that agencies will use them. Are you seeing people getting more comfortable from the agency side at how organizations will use these chatbots and the way that they interact with the citizen, with the end user that the agency is serving?
Yeah, so the chatbot integration and also the cyber integration, I mean, both of those things are really pushing the boundaries of AI. People are a lot more comfortable using the chatbots. I mean, even Leidos' IT services that we have internally moved over to a chatbot, and it's powered by a company called MoveWorks. And so what that allows us to do is that allows us to really take off the burden of, unfortunately, we had a lot of internal paperwork that you had to do for a ticket. And so it writes the tickets for you and it updates you on the progress of the ticket. And so we're not changing the processes that we've built over time. What we're doing is we're alleviating the burden of actually completing all that documentation. And if approvals are needed, we don't ask for it. It knows who our manager is. It sends the note. It pops up on their screen. Is it okay? It clicks the button and it moves on. And Carolyn has a story about her recent example.
Yep. So every time your software gets updated by your corporate security organization or your federal security organization, something typically gets broken. And we're no exception. So the other day I was working happily on my computer, and all of a sudden all of my monitors just went away. They just went black, and I went, okay, this is a problem. So I flipped up the laptop lid, and thankfully that still worked correctly. Went into our chat bot, typed in, I need a hardware tech now to recreate this. And within minutes, I had the hardware tech at my desk fixing the problem, updating the drivers that had been replaced by older drivers in the update. And it was done, right? So I wasn't a first in, last out in the workflow. It was almost instantaneous. I was back up and running and functioning. So I find that our chatbot is really easy to use. And I think if you change that to a customer experience, so, Paperwork Reduction Act, all of our customers have Paperwork Reduction Act. Well, how do you make that happen? I think that the objective is, I need to bring on a new employee. What do I have to do? And you put that in the chatbot, and it gives you everything that has to be done. And by the way, here are all of your forms mostly filled out. All you've got to do is review and sign, as opposed to sitting at your desk and filling out all those forms for that new employee. So Paperwork Reduction Act, easy peasy. The chatbot makes your life easier.
When it comes to the technology, getting back to the mission and getting away from the forms and processes that you have to fill out, I haven't heard anybody objecting to that. Like, people don't take jobs to, like, hey, I can't wait to fill out forms and do paperwork. So I don't think I'm offending any of your viewers, but what allows us to do is allows us to get back to those use cases, those mission statements, and so people can focus on what the real issues are and use the human brain power for the hard stuff.
You said something a moment ago, Seth, that I thought was interesting. You talked about the fact that the chatbot doesn't involve changing the process that an organization follows to deliver the result. It just changes the way that the end user interacts with that process to get the end result. How important is it that the end user understands we're not doing things differently, we're not cutting corners, we're not doing any of that? You're just able to get what you need the way that Carolyn just described it. You're able to get what you need a lot better, a lot faster, a lot more efficiently, whatever the benefit is.
Absolutely. And so what we've been seeing is that if we can apply AI to all the pieces and parts of the process that are normal, right? So we used to talk about robotic process automation, and so the difference between robotic process automation and AI is pretty substantial, right? Because you want AI to create something that's going to generate something new, right? Robotic process automation allows you to repeat reoccurring tasks efficiently. And so when you use those together, that's when you have a large language model in front that understands Carolyn's problem and understands that it's important, but then you have an RPA module behind it that fills out all your paperwork. And so it's a combination of using both of those things.
What's the intersection that you see of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity?
Oh yeah, so we talked on your show about that the adversaries have it, right? We better be ready for it. Cybersecurity to me is the hardest and easiest problem for AI to be applied to. It's easy because it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Why wouldn't you try to beef up your defenses? And that at the same time is, what are you going to give it access to? How can this AI be used against me? And is this AI as good as the AI adversary that I'm going against? And so it's going to be a cat and mouse game. It always has been. It always will be. But what the AI allows state actors to be able to accomplish in a very short amount of time is the threat, because now they can take that and they can say, you know what, I don't have as many analysts anymore, but I have the analysts now supercharged with AI. And so these analysts could now do, 10 times the amount of work that they used to do. And those decisions and that learning process, if they're doing it right, the AI is going to start learning from the really good analysts. And so now you have more really good analysts against your existing defenses. And so we've been looking at both offensive and defensive technologies when it comes to AI. And it's exciting and scary at the same time, because unfortunately, if I think about it, or if Leidos thinks it up, that means other people are thinking it up too, and that means that it's a cat and mouse game, and it's gonna be important.
I think it's gonna just continue to be it's going to continue to evolve, and if we're not ahead of it, it's going to become the thing that takes down our systems, our society as we know it today. We're already seeing bits and pieces of that today. We see it all the time in the news, right? I think there is real challenge to how much AI is allowed to be used or how much it is used. And if we don't keep up with the threat, and the pacing item is, where is the threat in their AI journey? And are we able to still defend against it? And are we able to go after that threat?
Yeah. I mean, you can make it a law to not use AI in certain situations, but I'm pretty sure criminals don't follow the law anyway.
Exactly.
So.
Carolyn, how does getting ahead of it, in your words, work especially in the areas in which you have expertise, in Homeland Security, in defense, in law enforcement, and so on? How does one know that one is getting ahead of whatever it is one needs to get ahead of in this area?
I don't think you ever really, really know. But if I find a vulnerability, if I am able to patch that vulnerability before that vulnerability becomes public using an AI solution, then I can continue to move ahead of that pacing threat, right? Because every piece of software, no matter how good we are at building the software, it's going to have a vulnerability. So if I'm using AI for test cases, if I'm using AI to identify problems in the code, and I can use AI to help resolve those problems ahead of pushing the code out to a larger network, I'm going to stay at least one step ahead of everybody else who sees the code for the first time.
One of the things I think that surprised folks greatly over the last 18 months, 2 years, was how quickly generative AI became a thing and became usable, and how quickly they want to start to introduce Gen AI into use cases and pilots. If you sit down with a customer now and that person says to you, all right, that kind of snuck up on me, what should I be thinking about now that is something that otherwise could potentially sneak up on me in 18 months or 2 years or whatever? Carolyn, I'll start with you. What do you tell that customer they should be looking at over the horizon?
Well, so I think every piece of Gen AI, every Gen AI product, before it ever is used in a customer network, before it's ever used on a customer problem, must be reviewed for its provenance, must be reviewed for, did they use open source to get their code base? Was there something in that code base that was perhaps improper? Where were the developers that contributed to the open source? And not go in believing everyone is good and wonderful, but go in with a threat mindset. Is there something in this Gen AI that I need to be aware of? And what is the source of supply for this product? And then in 18 months, when there's 17 new products and all the products we started with are gone, you have to go through the same process. You always must approach it with a threat mindset and not be 100% trusting of that Gen AI coding until you understand where it came from.
Seth, what do you see over the horizon that people should be thinking about now?
Well, so there's a common theme when it comes to the customers that we're talking to, and that is, where does my data go? right? So I type this in, or I upload documents, or I have this interface with my users. Where is that information stored? Where is it going? And like Carolyn said, where's the provenance of the answers that are coming back? And that's something that we're seeing, where if you go with a straight commercial vendor, your data is part of the training. And so if you were to not do that, right, and you would say, look, I want to make sure, like this is the conversation that you have with your provider, is I want to make sure that this is not in a training mode. I need to make sure that this data is going to be where I put it, and that if I want to wipe it, I can wipe it, right? And so the data loss prevention is something that you need to talk about before entering any of these agreements.
Seth and Carolyn, it's terrific insight. It's really great to talk to you both, and I appreciate having you on the program today. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Thank you, Frank.
You can read more about AI and the federal government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. I know you're really busy and you might not catch all the podcasts and TV shows FedGov Today offers you. If you want to keep up with everything that we're putting out, you can follow us on LinkedIn to get the latest updates. You'll get the next FedGov Today podcast next Wednesday. Till then, thanks very much for listening.